The Olympics would be nothing without music.
It's perfect for you.
Ah, she's like singing out of my soul.
Sometimes we get lost in our own little world, but it's all so much bigger than we realize.
Okay. Maybe it's also about amazing athletes coming together, showing us what the human body is capable of doing. Many people representing various countries from all around the world coming together to celebrate the art of sport, of physical ability, how we can conquer our body, mind, and spirit to perform the unthinkable, from running fast to jumping high to lifting heavy things. But nonetheless, I would argue it would not be the same without music. From the music that plays in the background as the athletes come onto the field and step onto the platform, to the compositions that play as the torch is lit, to the music that is created and composed that becomes the anthem, the theme song of that year's Olympic. Let's talk about it a little bit today and the psychology behind it. Happy 2024 Olympics. Here we go. Imagine if there was no music. Take it out of your day-to-day life. Take it out of movies. Take it out of the Olympics. What would that sound like? Imagine watching world-class athletes getting into the start position to run the fastest that they've ever run. Athletes jumping into the water, getting ready to swim. And all you hear is... It wouldn't quite be the same, would it? There's something about music, instrumental or with lyrics, that accompanies the artists and these athletes and their performances. And I want to talk a bit about that today, the psychology behind it. When we look at music in the Olympics, we can see that artists that are world-renowned, that are famous, popular, or trending in the music industry come together to write songs. This year, for 2024, it looks like Gwen Stefani and Anderson .Paak teamed together for a song. And I want to listen to it with you. Have you heard it? What do you think about it? Is it worthy of the Olympics? Why did they compose it the way they did? I want to check it out with you. But I also want to look a little bit at the type of music that would play in history during the Olympics. According to the RollingStones.com, when we look at the 15 best Olympic performances, musical performances, we can see a whole list of legendary artists that came together. In 2000, for example, in the Sydney Summer Olympics, Olivia Newton-John and John Farnham teamed together and performed a song called Dare to Dream. That title in and of itself seems to be fitting when it comes to the Olympics, because you have people from all walks of life, from all around the world, who have worked so very hard to be part of what may be considered the greatest sports event of all time. And I would say it's the greatest because while American football, for example, is a billions and billions dollar worth business, it is not as important to everyone around the world. You have the same with soccer, both in Europe, now increasingly in America. You have the Euro Cup, you have the World Cup that is popular around the world, but it is still a specific sport that draws in soccer lovers. And you have that with every sport where it's bigger, more popular or less popular in various countries, pulls together people from around the world, but it's specific to a specific sport, and therefore will draw in a specific type of crowd. With the Olympics, you have so many different types of sports covered, and that's what's so fascinating. Even the symbol itself, the rings, to me showcases this idea of a cycle, something that comes full circle, that is connected all the way around. There's no corners, there's no buts and ifs, and it's various circles that are overlapping, that consist of different colors that come together in unity. And the two biggest symbols of the Olympics are exactly that, the rings and the flame, the torch that is lit. The 5 interconnected rings in 5 colors, blue, yellow, black, green, and red, are symbolic to the Olympic Games. We don't even have to read the word Olympics to know that this is what those rings represent. In 1912, Baron Pierre de Coubertin, a co-founder of the Games, he designed that logo. And the 5 colors were corresponding to the flags of the countries that participated in the 1912 Olympic Games. And of course, since then, many other countries have joined, but the 5 rings now represent countries from all around the world coming together in unity. The intention of the rings was that it would embody a unified world that comes together with the same idea that we find in Olympism, which are values that encourage physical fitness, self-control, that encourage fitness of both mind and body, that promote teamwork and care for one another. I believe it's much deeper than just an athlete who has worked really hard and now does really well. There's so many different elements depending on the sport within the Olympics, from people working together to passing a baton to the next, from people that will move ahead that will move ahead with their scores depending on how they and their teammates do, from working together, training hard, from not only practicing physical self-control, but self-control of the mind, where it all begins, our brain and the way it impacts our body. It is meant to care for humanity and a possibility for all types of people to participate without discrimination. People from all shades of brown, all around the world, that are coming together for their specific sport. Whereas the rings are fairly modern, the flame ties it to its ancient heritage, which is the ancient Greek Olympic Games, where a large basin of fire was kept alight for the entirety of the games, of the ceremonies and the competitions. To me, this idea of a constant flame is very inspiring because it implies something ongoing and eternal. And from a psychological standpoint, of course, one could argue that also ties into our existential desire to continue to exist, to leave a legacy, not to die, not to fade, our death anxieties and mortal fears. Perhaps it ties into our desire for something to be unconditional, to be ongoing, something eternal that binds us together, that makes us feel like we're part of something greater, so we don't feel as lonely or as isolated. There's different ways we can interpret that, but something that is ongoing and continues to burn, I think can be linked to that desire within us for passion, for something that is vibrant and alive and fierce like fire. The constant flame, according to Britannica, mirrored the theft of fire by the Titan Prometheus, humanity's supposed creator, from the Greek god Zeus. Prometheus' gift of the flame to humanity was said to give humanity its nudge towards civilization. And so for the modern Olympic Games, it represents a consideration of that myth, an ode to the growth of civilization and a link to the ancient Olympic Games. Over the years, many artists have come together who have had the honor bestowed on them to write songs, perform songs for the Olympic Games. Even a song like Dare to Dream from the 2000 Olympics in Sydney is fitting because it is a dream come true for many people. And it does require courage. It does require daring to dream, to step out into something like this. Alanis Morissette performed at the 2010 Vancouver Winter Olympics, and her performance was of Wunderkind. She delivered a delicate version of the song from the Chronicles of Narnia. One Direction performed at the 2012 London Summer Olympics, and then we had Gilberto Gil, Catiano Veloso, and Anita at the 2016 Rio Summer Olympics. Luciano Pavarotti at the 2010 Winter Olympics. Months before his cancer diagnosis, he delivered his final public performance during the opening ceremony, and the result was nothing short of chilling. You see, so not only is music powerful because it adds a framework, the composition to play in the background, but there's something special here because these are artists that people love, that people directly identify with because maybe they grew up listening to this artist or they heard a song by this artist that impacted them significantly. These are artists that mean something to people. But they also have their own life story, people who are going through death in life, who are going through diagnoses and loss. And to see an artist and maybe even experience this artist for the last time or the first time performing on such a great platform, on such a great stage for an event that is considered and respected around the world, that's special. That becomes very memorable. Leona Lewis and Jimmy Page performed in 2008. They performed the Led Zeppelin classic Whole Lotta Love. And the list goes on that Rolling Stones goes through. At the top 3, RollingStones.com lists Celine Dion at number 3, the 96 Atlanta Summer Olympics. Performing the sweeping ballad, The Power of the Dream. Again, very fitting concept. Number 2, RollingStones.com places Stevie Wonder at the 96 Summer Olympics with a tearful rendition of Imagine in honor of his late friend John Lennon. So again, this is beyond just music that fits to the idea of sports or unity or people from around the world coming together. These are people honoring other people who have died. These are people experiencing life and on this great stage, which may be the biggest accomplishment of their life, which may be life-changing even for these artists to be able to say, I sung at the Olympics. And number 1, Björk at the 2004 Athens Summer Olympics during the open ceremony turned it into art. Rolling Stone says the Icelandic artist appeared in a crystal emblazoned dress made of 10,000 feet of fabric that swelled over the athletes and the crowd as she sang Oceana, which was co-written with the poet Sigurdsson. As Björk metaphorically appeared as the ocean, she was joined by dancers posing as Greek gods. Let's look at the historic moment when the torch was lit this year in 2024.
Very magical moment. The official Olympic flame lighting ceremony. In ancient Olympia, of course, the flame was lit throughout the duration of the games, and that is the continuity that we're seeing.
Here, ironically, we are hearing crickets or birds, but of course, one could argue that even the sound of birds and crickets is music. Those are sound waves that are being created. So while it may not be your typical music composition in the background, there are noises going on, there is music going on. And sometimes silence is even more poignant and more fitting than music or lyrics, because there is a moment of awe. Maybe it creates a moment of silent reflection and reverence, which may be what we want to evoke here. Remembering, honoring history, bringing in the ancient elements here in Olympia, the torch being lit, relaying it to Paris, passing on this flame now that will continue to burn as we move to Paris for this year's Olympic Games. This is big. This is memorable.
In the modern era as well, once this flame is lit, it will not be extinguished until the closing ceremony in Paris.
What an honor.
That is, will concentrate the rays of the sun so that the flame can be lit here in front of the Temple of Hera, dedicated to the Queen of the Greek gods, Hera. It's one of the most impressive of the buildings that remain here on this ancient site. Originally built approximately 590 BC.
Wow.
Stood until an earthquake in the early 4th century.
It's amazing. What an honor.
Of the lighting of the torch, the High Priestess will ask Apollo, the god of the sun, for his assistance in lighting the torch.
I have goosebumps. There's something so reverent and exciting about this.
Ιερά σιωπή, να ηχήσει όλος ο αιθέρας, η γη, η θάλασσα και οι πνοές των ανέμων, όροι και τέμπη. Σιγήστε, ήχοι και φωνές πουλιών, πάυσατε, για τη μέλη να μας συντροφεύσει ο Φίβος, ο Φωσφόρος βασιλεύς. Της ιδέας του φωτός έστειλε στις ακτίνες σου και άναψε στην ιερή δάδα για τη φιλόξενη πόλη του Παρισιού. Και εσύ, Δία, χάρισε ειρήνη σ' όλους τους λαούς της γης και στεφάνωσε τους νικητές του ιερού αγώνα.
This is so fascinating. Someone in the comments said, and let me know if you understood and if this is the correct translation. Loose translation would be, let holy silence sound in all ether. Earth, sea, the breath of the winds, mountains and valleys be silent. Sounds and voices of birds be quiet, because Phoebus, the phosphorus king, will be with us. Apollo, god of the sun and the idea of light, you sent your rays and lit the sacred torch for the hospitable city of Paris. And you, Zeus, give peace to all people on earth, and crown the victorious of the blessed games. So it sounds almost like this plea, this prayer, this blessing. And, that in itself could be a whole video talking about the psychology of what it means when people come together through rituals and through religion, right? The fact that she's referred to as high priestess, the fact that we see these women all dressed alike in this uniform attire, beautiful gowns that walk in a very honorable, elegant and composed way. It would have affected us very differently if they ran in. It would have affected us differently if they all wore whatever they wanted. It would have affected us differently if they wore ripped jeans. There was something about the elegance to me, about the poise, the self-control, the honor, right? We live in a world, at least in the West, where sometimes I've seen things called sacred that I wouldn't consider sacred at all. And of course, that too is tricky and subjective, because what may be special to me may not be to another. But my thought when I hear things being called sacred, or when everything is looked at as sacred and special, to me, that nullifies the definition. Because by definition, something that is sacred is supposed to be set apart. But if everything is sacred, it's no longer set apart, right? It's no longer special. If we are all the same, we're no longer unique. If everything is sacred, nothing is sacred, because nothing is set apart. Nothing is unique. Nothing is other than and worthy of reverence. So there is a time and place for things to be reverent, for things to be silent. There is a time and place for music to cease, for us to perhaps understand that that is music too. Silence. There's always waves anyways. There's always sound waves, from the birds in the background and the crickets chirping to the sand and the rocks rustling under these women's sandals. There's always sound, from her voice projecting, from people clapping, from someone coughing. Sound we're perceiving are sound waves that are traveling to our ear and being perceived by our mind. So there's always something going on, and it's hard to come by absolute silence. But in that silence, as close as we can get to it, there's an element of reverence here. The women holding the torch, this idea of bowing down, kneeling, this idea of saying a blessing. It reminds me of many religions where this idea of kneeling shows reverence and worship, where this idea of walking in an honorable, respectable way implies that this is special, this is a special moment, or clapping and celebrating once the torch is lit. Doing it in a ceremonial way, implying perhaps or tying in with our human tendency to want to worship things, to want to set things apart, to want to have moments of honor and reverence, to want to understand that something has begun, right? If we just say, well, it's been happening, the Olympic Games happened, there's no start, there's no end, there's no specific point. As much as we fear death, as much as we sometimes fight against things ending, desperately trying to stay forever young, desperately trying to hold on to moments because they trickle through our hands like sand, as much as we tend to do that as people, if there was no beginning or end, I don't think we could appreciate things. There's something about knowing when something has officially begun, or finding closure when something is officially done. And so there's a lot of beauty here, but also I see this human tendency to just want to have ceremonies, want to have moments that are set apart for a specific cause. And again, there too, a lot of psychology and in our human behavior and how that ties in with our identity and what we deem special or not. But I'd never seen something like this before. So this is really epic. And this is basically this initiation of the flame being kindled, being lit in Olympia in Greece to start the trek for the Olympic flame. Now let us see as Snoop Dogg carries the Olympic torch into Paris. What an interesting contrast, right? Snoop Dogg is an icon in hip hop and rap and in the music industry, been around for a while, a current day, still living music figure that, many have come to love and respect, who does all kinds of things at this point. But is a strong contrast to me to, say, for example, the ancient Olympic torch lighting. So there's a lot of interesting picks here that I find just beautiful to see. It all ties together.
All right, and we have some major Olympic updates this morning. Let's go to the video. This video is actually video we're seeing for the first time because it literally just came into the newsroom.
Oh, cool.
This is
Does that look like a
going
giant
to the Olympic Village right now? The torch is being carried, and you see it. by none other than Snoop Dogg from the LBC all the way.
This is amazing, being carried all the way through. So that's also special, that torch being passed on. Amazing tie, I feel, to history, right? How from generation to generation we pass something on. The Olympic Games have been passed on from generation to generation, from myths and legend to people celebrating this, passing it on. More and more countries coming together here, various shades of brown running beside each other, holding the torch, passing it to the next. In addition to that being a sport, there's something very symbolic to be said about that. Talk to me about what it makes you think of. But for Snoop Dogg to be walking here carrying that torch is pretty special. A little bit comedic because it looks like a giant
here at the Olympics,
when he was carrying it.
That? He's such a great ambassador. I know so many jokes there with the torch and everything else, but that's for tonight. But
Light it up, Snoop.
So proud of Snoop there. He's been such a great fan
Light it up, Snoop.
and sort of cheerleader for Team USA. And us here at NBC, it's been so great. There are so many stars all over the village and all over Paris right now that are in town for the opening ceremony. Yeah. It's such a magical time in a magical city.
Okay, let's look at the 2024 song with, what is it, Gwen Stefani and Anderson .Paak, Hello World, Song of the Olympics. What do you think about it? Let's see.
I've been waiting for you and your friends. One love begins. Tip top, we're starting at 10.
Okay, one love, very fitting to the idea of Olympic rings, unity, people from around the world. Hello, world. Great way to start. We're greeting, we're welcoming, you're all welcome, we're all one, we're all connected. Very catchy, hip-hoppy. It has a little bit of that Uptown Funk, Bruno Mars, The Weeknd vibe to me.
You believe that we can make some magic up and say yeah? If you believe that we can make some magic up and say yeah? Yeah!
Let some magic happen. Making moves. Okay, party groove and very fitting, very catchy. Talking about making moves, very fitting because obviously the Olympics is all about movement. So that's cool. Okay, I have to pause a lot, guys. I don't want to get copyright strikes on this. So understand, if you want to listen to the thing from start to finish, please go listen on your own, which is great anyways to go check out the Olympics YouTube channel and these songs. But a lot of the wording here is fitting, even chasing the sun. Obviously, because for one, when you're doing a type of sport, you might be going towards that horizon, chasing the sun, chasing gold. That could be a reference for the sun is like gold, right? You're chasing that gold medal. You're chasing the light. You're chasing the horizon, but you're literally running towards sometimes. But also perhaps this tie to the eternal flame and the sun and the ancient Greek mythology. Different ways to interpret that. Very catchy, right? Something we can all sing along with. Yeah, yeah, yeah. See? Fitting to sports, right? To people.
I was minding my business, taking care of business, doing my thing. Woke up in the middle of the night like, heard the telephone ring. I don't need to tell you, I don't need to explain. It's hello world, we showing up, we changing the game. On the new
Game reference. We're trying to catch one, right? A medal, but also catching, because that's what you do in sports. You're catching balls, you're chasing the sun, you're running, you're making moves. Gwen, obviously full of bling, also representing a big icon in the music industry, that pop, that funk, that punk vibe and feeling. She's been around for a while, created awesome tracks that some of us know from our youth and childhood. Coming in with that bling in the class, right? Adding a lot of funk to this, a lot of fun. And it sounds like the type of song you would find to go with sports, right? World Cup, different sports, because it's catchy. You can play it on the radio. It can play in the background. It's not a type of musical piece of art where you have to now listen in detail and dissect because it's so artistic. It's straightforward when it comes to chord progression and beat. You got a few chords, you got your beats, and simple lyrics, a little bit of double entendre here and there, simple rhymes, nothing extravagant when it comes to musical composition. But when it comes to like this type of song of the Olympics, I think the idea is for it to be radio worthy, catch worthy, simple to remember, and something that it can easily play in the background as you're focusing on what's really important, which is the athlete. And then when it comes to her outfit, because it looks like aluminum foil, the way we can interpret that is, I'm just kidding. That would be a little too deep. The symbolism here.
Stage, nothing can divide when we on one page. We can defy the odds and make way. When we link, it's
Okay, unity.
Electric, the motion, connection. That's the
Never can break. Eternal flame. That's cool. Hey. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Yeah. Okay, that's catchy. I'm going to leave that be. So, what do you think? What do you think about this? Is this a good Olympic song? Is this worthy of the Olympics? And what are your thoughts about it compared to some of the ones that have come before? I want to check out snippets of some of those that the Rolling Stones listed the top 15. And what stood out to me the most that I want to see is, let me see here real quick. I want to see Leona Lewis and Jimmy Page did with that Whole Lot of Love, because I recently reacted to that. So naturally that's on my radar and I want to see what she did here. Let's just look at a snippet of that. Did you see it? This was from the 28 Beijing Summer Olympics. Let's see. Just a snippet. Might not even watch the whole thing. Loading.
The bus is opening up like a lotus flower.
Wow. Oh. That's amazing.
That is a very famous London skyline.
Oh.
And that is British pop star Leona Lewis, who is a huge recording star all over the world. In fact, has topped the charts in more than 20 countries, including the United States.
That's nuts.
Well chosen, a 23-year-old from East London.
I would be so nervous on that thing. I didn't know she could sing like that. I knew she had a soulful voice. But those high notes, the operatic.
There he is. We've been expecting him. Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin fame.
That's nuts, dude. Okay. Very different rendition than the original Led Zeppelin, but still catchy. And of course, special because of Jimmy Page in it and amazing soulful vocals by Leona Lewis. When we look at the music that plays, for example, as Carrie Richardson come up on the starting point for their race, you find different types of music. Sometimes there may be more rock, sometimes there be more hip hop or pop, but you got different beats, different melodies that are setting the stage. And depending on the composition, it affects us differently emotionally. We know that major chords are often more meant for happy feelings, excitement. The minor chords often used for things that are more sad or dramatic. We have different instruments that add drama, such as a lot of strings or excitement and fun when you bring in trumpets and various horns. You have ballads that receive this extra touch of drama and emotion when you have them accompanied with pianos or finger picking on the guitar. You can create a lot of crescendo through drums, percussion, and various rhythmic instruments. There's so much that happens in us psychologically in our emotions when our brain receives the signals from these sound waves that are created by music. By these instruments, the music that comes to us through sound waves, our brain perceives that and sends signals, these neurons that are firing in our brain, these signals that are sent to the rest of our body that may excite us and make our heart beat faster, that increase blood flow into oxygen and that increase blood flow within us, that bring in the adrenaline kick and that dopamine release. A lot of things that are happening chemically, biologically within us, but they affect our emotions and how we perceive things. And so with music, in sports, I think a lot of times it adds to the excitement. It motivates us. I experience this when I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. As I'm rolling, when there's heavy metal playing in the background, it kickstarts this aggression, this excitement, and this passion that makes me want to roll even harder, that makes me want to give it my all. Sometimes you may have athletes who prefer instrumental music with no lyrics to avoid any distractions or something that's calming and soothing so they can be calm and focused and to push aside any anxiety. Music has so much power and impact. It affects the crowd, right? Not only the athletes who are getting ready to work together and aim for the gold. You have the crowd too that may be clapping, also creating music by doing so, singing and chanting, as we find in the Euro Cup and in sports and soccer games, where people are chanting, singing, coming together, creating a level of excitement and passion. It brings people together in a very powerful way. Unlike anything else, it's a universal language. When we look at, for example, what Rolling Stones claims to be the number one Olympic song performance, they say it was Björk from singing Oceana from the 2004 Olympics. Let's listen to a glimpse of that and see why that might have been labeled number one. All these people, so many colors and countries and flags represented.
One breath away from Mother Oceania, your nimble feet make prints in my sands.
She has such a unique voice.
Good for yourselves since you left my wet embrace and
You've done good for yourself. It's almost like the ocean is singing to humankind since you've left my wet embrace, right? To imply perhaps the theory of evolution of cells and microorganisms coming out of the water and evolving into different animals and beings and creatures. Powerful how there's just singing, acoustic, no instrumentation yet. Her distinct voice, very unique, the way she's moving her body, very artistic, very, very artful. People that are, what is this? Is that the 10,000 feet of fabric that are part of her dress, that are waving her dress, making it look wave-like? Every boy is a snake is a lily. I see a double entendre here, perhaps saying, we've all come from these organisms, or also implying we are all able to either be a snake, deceiving or sweet and beautiful like a lily. Could that be also a nod to the choices we have in life of who and what we can be, or perhaps how we're all connected to the ecosystem and organisms? Beautiful. Now the percussion and the beat is coming in, the rhythm, building crescendo, building excitement. You see how we're going here from a level of admiration, perhaps, silence, just her voice and people cheering, nothing else, to now building a crescendo, which now creates excitement. Now it keeps people interested, right? Now we're not just sitting there going, okay, she's just singing now. We're adding instrumentation, we're adding to the composition, which keeps people interested, but builds this picture, this painting of music. Amazing vocal range and that rasp. Very artistic, very artistic. People from all around the world underneath that ocean, the waves united, very symbolic. Your sweat is salty, right? Runners, athletes, of all the different people in the Olympics getting sweaty, working hard. All connected to the ocean. She's saying, I'm wild. Oh, I am why? I am why your sweat is salty. The ocean is why our sweat is salty. Wow. We're all connected by the ocean. We're all sweating, crying, working, and fighting hard for that gold. Not all of us, but, the athletes represent the different countries and represent us, which is also beautiful to think about. Look how the waves is all calm now. Covers so many people. Wow, that was so unique. Yeah, that was very cool. I see why maybe Rolling Stones deemed that the top. And then Stevie Wonder in 96. Wow, this is so interesting. These artists that come for the opening and closing ceremonies. Again, something there too to be said about how we long, even in our desire to be eternal, in our longing for the eternal and the unending and unconditional, we still appreciate beginnings and ends. We have our opening and closing ceremonies. We have the sacred, the worship, like the rituals, the desire for sacred, for silence, for reflection. You have music that accompanies these ceremonies, performances. And of course, part of it is entertainment and music business and money business. But there's also something to be said about these songs that are characteristic to each year, to each Olympic, of artists that were alive, that are still alive, that are performing, bringing their art, their hard work, their piece to these games, as we see these athletes, these brilliant world-class artists in their own right. Athletes are artists in their own right, using their body to create movements, to move fast, to jump high, to lift heavy, to swim, to overcome land and sea, to win against the other countries, but yet still unified. They're two, again, something very profound psychologically. We're competing. We want to win. We want to beat the other team. We want to be the country that comes out on top. You have these artists, these athletes representing their various respective countries and the various people in their countries cheering on their team. And yet there is a level of unity. You have countries against each other, but yet they're all doing so under one banner. And it is from a place of camaraderie, from a place of mutual respect. There is competition in balance with unity, in balance with respect and reverence. And that's powerful. But to conclude, imagine all of this would not be with music. Imagine that there would be no concert, there would be no song of the Olympics for the year, there would be no opening ceremony, there would be no music. And again, I want to emphasize, even those crickets, even those moments of silence, even the speech, the spoken word that was done so beautifully in Greece, all these things are music. They are sound waves. They are sounds that reach our ears, that affect what we're thinking and how we feel and how we interpret our reality. And that's just very interesting to me. What do you think? What do you think about the Olympics? Do you watch them? What has been your favorite musical performance throughout the years of the Olympics? What do you think of this year's song that is kind of seen as the song of the Olympics? Lady Gaga, in her Olympic opening ceremony, she performed the song Mon Truc en Plume, which is a song by Zizi Jeanmaire, and it means my thing made of feathers.
Paris.
Yeah.
Mon truc en plume, plume des oiseaux, des animaux.
Lady Gaga at the opening ceremony.
Mon truc en plume. C'est très malin, y a dans les
What do you think of Lady Gaga's performance? Of course, French is not her first language, but it is always impressive when an artist sings in another language, in a second language, and a beautiful way that she's honoring. She's not just showing up singing in English, she's singing in French, doing her best to sing this song and to honor the people of France and Paris. What do you think, guys? Let me know. What does music mean to you? What do you think it means in the Olympics? I'll see you on the next ride. Heyo!